Zuri pressed her face against the rain-soaked window of Hale's restaurant, watching wealthy diners laugh over plates piled high with food, while her empty stomach twisted with hunger, so sharp it made her hands shake. And when desperation finally pushed her through that kitchen door to steal a single meal, she had no idea that the billionaire owner watching from across the room was connected to her past in the most devastating way possible. Because sometimes the people who try to save you are the same ones whose mistakes destroyed everything you ever loved. And today, both of them were about to discover that redemption doesn't come from grand gestures. It comes from facing impossible truths and making choices that will either heal two broken hearts or shatter them completely. Just before we get back to it, I'd love to know where you're watching from today, and if you're enjoying these stories, make sure you're subscribed. Rain hammered the sidewalk outside Hale's restaurant, turning the street into a river of gray. Zuri pressed her small frame against the brick wall, her torn jacket doing little to shield her from the cold. Through the tall glass windows, she watched a world she'd never been part of. Inside, people sat at white-clothed tables, laughing over plates piled high with food. The glow of chandeliers made everything look warm, soft, almost magical. Out here, she shivered in shadows, her stomach cramped again, a sharp twist that made her bend slightly. When was the last time she'd eaten? Yesterday morning, maybe. A half-eaten sandwich she'd found near a park bench. Before that, nothing but rainwater and hope. Zuri was 10 years old, though she looked younger. Her dark skin was dusted with dirt, her hair matted from days without shelter. Her brown eyes, once bright, had learned to stay downcast. People didn't like when homeless kids looked at them. It made them uncomfortable, guilty, angry. She'd learned that lesson the hard way. Through the window, a waiter carried a tray past. Roasted chicken with golden skin, rice steaming in neat white mounds, vegetables glazed and perfect. Zuri's mouth watered so intensely it hurt. She swallowed hard and looked away, but her eyes drifted back. Always back to the food. A burst of laughter erupted from a corner table. 3 men in expensive suits clinked crystal glasses. One of them stood out, even from outside. Tall, confident, with salt and pepper hair combed perfectly back. He gestured as he spoke, and the other men leaned in, hanging on every word. That was Marcus Hale, owner of this restaurant and a dozen others across the city. Zuri had heard his name before, whispered by other street kids. "Rich as a king," one boy had said. "Doesn't care about people like us." Marcus laughed at something one of his companions said, then checked his watch. Everything about him screamed control, power, certainty. He belonged in that warm room the same way Zuri belonged in the cold rain. A delivery truck pulled up to the Abbas alley beside the restaurant. 2 men in white uniforms jumped out and started unloading crates. One of them propped the back kitchen door open with a wooden wedge, letting out a wave of heat and the smell of garlic, butter, and fresh bread. Zuri's legs moved before her mind caught up. She darted around the corner, heart pounding. The delivery men were focused on their work, grunting as they carried heavy boxes inside. The door stood open, unguarded, inviting. Zuri glanced left, then right. No one was watching. She slipped through like a shadow. The kitchen was chaos. Chefs shouted orders, pans clanged, flames leapt from stovetops. Steam filled the air, thick and hot. Zuri kept low, moving between stainless steel counters. Her hands trembled. She'd never stolen food from inside a restaurant before. Dumpsters. Yes. Convenience stores, once or twice. But never someplace like this. On a counter near the swinging door to the dining room, a finished plate sat waiting. Herb-crusted chicken breast, wild rice, roasted carrots, and green beans. A small ramekin of sauce on the side. It looked like something from a dream. Zuri reached for it, her fingers closing around the warm ceramic edge. She lifted it carefully, holding her breath. "Hey, what are you?" A sous chef spotted her, his eyes going wide. Zuri didn't wait. She pushed through the swinging door into the dining room, clutching the plate against her chest. The conversation died like someone had turned off a switch. 50 faces turned toward her. 50 pairs of eyes, wide with shock, judgment, disgust. Zuri's legs felt like water, but she kept moving. An empty booth near the back. She slid into it, set the plate down with shaking hands, and grabbed the fork. The first bite of chicken was so good it almost made her cry. Warm, seasoned, tender. Real food. She shoveled rice into her mouth, not caring about the stares, the whispers rising around her like a swarm of wasps. Is that a homeless child? How did she get in here? Someone call security. This is disgusting. I'm leaving. Zuri kept eating, tears streaming down her dirty cheeks. She didn't want to cry. Crying made you weak, made people think they could hurt you more. But the food was so good, and she was so tired, and everything was too much. Security! The manager appeared, a thin man in a pressed suit, his face red with fury. Get her out of here, now! 2 security guards rushed over, big men in black uniforms. One of them grabbed Zuri's arm, yanking her up from the booth. The fork clattered to the table. She tried to hold on to the plate, but the guard knocked it away. It shattered on the floor, food scattering across polished wood. No, please, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. Zuri's voice came out small and broken. You think you can just walk in here and steal? The manager hissed, bending down to her level. His breath smelled like coffee and mint. You're going to jail, you little thief. I was hungry, Zuri whispered. I just wanted to eat. Should have thought about that before you broke the law. Marcus had been watching from his table, his conversation with the investors forgotten. Something about the girl's face, the way her thin shoulders shook, the desperate way she'd eaten that food. It struck something deep in his chest, something that hadn't moved in years. He stood abruptly. His chair scraped against the floor. The investors looked up, confused. Marcus, where are you? He didn't answer. He crossed the dining room in long strides, aware of every eye following him. The security guards were dragging Zuri toward the door. She wasn't fighting anymore, just hanging limp in their grip, defeated. Stop. Marcus's voice cut through the noise. Let her go. The guards froze. The manager spun around, his expression somewhere between confusion and panic. Mr. Hale, I was just handling the situation. This girl broke in and stole food. We need to... I said let her go. The guards released Zuri's arms. She stumbled, caught herself against a table. Her eyes met Marcus's for just a second before dropping to the floor. She needs to eat, Marcus said, his voice steady but somehow softer now. Bring her a fresh plate, a full meal. Silence crashed over the room. The manager's mouth opened and closed like a fish. Sir, with all due respect, if we start letting homeless people eat for free. Did I ask for your opinion? Marcus's tone didn't rise, but it hardened. The manager's face went pale. No, sir. Then bring her food. Now. The manager nodded stiffly and hurried toward the kitchen. The guards backed away, uncertain. Zuri stood frozen, not understanding what was happening. Was this a trick? Was he going to hurt her? Marcus gestured to the booth she'd been sitting in. Go ahead. Sit down. Zuri hesitated, then slowly slid back into the seat. Her whole body was shaking. Marcus remained standing, his hands in his pockets, watching her with an expression she couldn't read. A waitress appeared minutes later, a young black woman with kind eyes and braids pulled back in a neat bun. Maya, her name tag read. She set down a plate even bigger than the first one. Chicken, potatoes, vegetables, a roll with butter, and a glass of milk. She gave Zuri a small, encouraging smile before stepping back. Zuri looked at Marcus, then at the food, then back at Marcus. I can really eat this? Yes. She picked up the fork with trembling fingers and started eating. This time she tried to go slower, more carefully, but her body betrayed her. She was so hungry. So hungry. The room stayed silent, everyone watching. Some people had their phones out, recording. Marcus didn't seem to notice or care. One of the investors approached, keeping his voice low. "Marcus, do you understand what this looks like? The press will have a field day. Billionaires restaurant feeding criminals. This could damage the brand." Marcus didn't look away from Zuri. "Then let it." The investor blinked. "What? If our brand can't survive an act of basic humanity, then maybe it's not worth protecting." The investor opened his mouth and closed it, then walked back to their table. Marcus heard them whispering, saw them exchanging glances. He'd deal with the fallout later. Right now, watching this child eat like she hadn't seen food in days, nothing else seemed important. Near the window, a woman watched the scene unfold. Claire Hale, Marcus's wife, had arrived moments earlier for their planned lunch meeting. She stood just inside the entrance, rain dripping from her coat, her blue eyes fixed on her husband and the small girl. Her expression was unreadable, somewhere between concern and something else. Something painful. Zuri finished the food in less than 10 minutes. She drank the milk in 3 long gulps, then set the glass down carefully. Her eyes were still wet, but she wasn't crying anymore. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice hoarse. "Thank you, sir." Marcus nodded slowly. He wanted to say something. Anything. But words felt inadequate. Before he could find the right ones, the restaurant's front door burst open. A police officer stepped inside, his hand resting on his belt. Someone had called the cops. Officer Grant was in his early 30s with a square jaw and tired eyes that had seen too much. He scanned the room until he spotted Zuri. His expression tightened. "That the girl?" The manager rushed over. "Yes, officer. She broke in through the kitchen and stole food. We have multiple witnesses." Zuri's eyes went wide with terror. She bolted from the booth, darting toward the kitchen. Grant moved fast, but Zuri was faster. She knew how to run. She'd been running her whole life. She burst through the kitchen door, past shocked chefs, and out the delivery entrance into the alley. Her feet splashed through puddles as she ran, her heart hammering so hard it hurt. Behind her, she heard shouting, footsteps. But she didn't look back. She ran until her lungs burned, until the restaurant was blocks behind her, until she collapsed under a highway overpass, gasping for air. Only then did she realize something was missing. She patted her pockets frantically. No. The photograph. The one of her mama holding her as a baby. The only picture she had left. She must have dropped it in the restaurant. Zuri pressed her hands against her face and sobbed. Back at Hale's restaurant, Marcus stood in the empty booth where Zuri had been sitting. Something white caught his eye on the floor, half hidden under the table. He bent down and picked it up. A photograph, creased and worn from years of handling. In it, a young black woman with a bright smile held a baby girl, maybe 6 months old. The baby was laughing, one tiny hand reaching toward the camera. Marcus stared at the photo, something cold settling in his stomach. He couldn't explain why, but the woman's face stirred a memory, something distant, something he'd tried to forget. "Marcus?" He looked up. Claire stood beside the table, her coat still damp. She looked at the photograph in his hand, then at his face. "What's wrong?" she asked quietly. He shook his head, slipping the photo into his jacket pocket. "Nothing, just nothing." But it wasn't nothing. As they left the restaurant together, walking to their car in silence, Marcus couldn't shake the image of that little girl's desperate eyes, or the photograph burning like a coal in his pocket. The photograph sat on Marcus Hale's desk, a small rectangle of faded color against dark mahogany. He'd been staring at it for the better part of an hour, his untouched coffee growing cold. The young woman's smile seemed to ask him questions he didn't want to answer. Claire appeared in the doorway of his home office, wearing her silk robe, her blonde hair loose around her shoulders. It was past midnight. "You're still up?" Marcus quickly flipped the photo over. "Just finishing some work." She moved closer, her bare feet silent on the hardwood. "You've been acting strange since this afternoon, since that girl." She paused. "What's really going on?" "Nothing's going on. Marcus." Her voice carried warning. "Don't lie to me. We've been married 15 years. I know when something's eating at you." He leaned back in his chair, rubbing his eyes. "I don't know. There's just something about her." When I looked at her face, he trailed off. Claire's expression tightened. "She's not him." The words hit like a slap. Marcus's jaw clenched. Their son, Daniel, had died 3 years ago, 7 years old, bright-eyed and curious. A car accident, a drunk driver. Gone in an instant. The wound never healed. It just scarred over, tender and raw underneath. "I know that," Marcus said quietly. "Do you?" Claire's voice softened, but the edge remained. "Because I saw how you looked at her. Like you were trying to save someone you can't save." Marcus didn't respond. What could he say? She wasn't entirely wrong. Claire sighed and left without another word. The door clicked shut, leaving Marcus alone with the photograph and his thoughts. The video hit social media by morning. Someone had recorded the entire incident at the restaurant, from Zuri eating with desperate hunger to Marcus ordering food for her. The internet exploded. Within hours, it had millions of views. Billionaire shows compassion to homeless child. Marcus Hale let starving girl eat at his restaurant. Heartwarming moment goes viral. But not everyone saw it that way. Rich man uses homeless child for PR. Staged sympathy. Restaurant owner accused of exploitation. Hale Industries stock drops amid stunt controversy. By noon, Marcus's phone wouldn't stop ringing. His PR team wanted an emergency meeting. His board of directors demanded a statement. Investors were nervous. The whole situation was spiraling, and Marcus found himself not caring as much as he should. What he cared about was finding that girl. Zuri huddled under the Bridgeway Street overpass, her favorite spot when the rain got bad. The concrete ledge above kept most of the water off, and the cars rushing by created enough noise that she could cry without anyone hearing. She'd cried herself out hours ago. Now she just sat, knees pulled to her chest, staring at nothing. The photograph was gone. The last piece of her mama. The only proof that she'd been loved once, that she'd belonged to someone. Now it was probably in a trash can somewhere, thrown away like garbage. Like her. "Mama, I'm sorry," she whispered. "I lost you again." The rain continued to fall, steady and cold. Zuri closed her eyes and tried to remember her mother's voice. It was getting harder every day. The memories were fading, slipping away like water through her fingers. A sound made her look up. Someone was approaching through the rain. Zuri tensed, ready to run. But it was just Maya, the waitress from the restaurant. She carried a paper bag, her braids soaked and dripping. "Hey," Maya said softly, crouching down. "I thought I might find you here." Zuri stared at her. "How did you know where I was?" "I didn't for sure, but I've been homeless before. Years ago. I know the spots." She held out the bag. "Brought you some food. Leftovers from tonight's service. Still warm." Zuri didn't take it. "Why are you being nice to me?" "Because someone was nice to me once when I needed it." Maya set the bag down between them. "And because what you did yesterday, coming back to clean up the mess you made, that took guts. Most people would have just run and never looked back." Zuri looked at the bag. Her stomach growled, betraying her. She hadn't eaten since the restaurant yesterday. "I don't take charity." It's not charity, it's leftovers that would go in the trash anyway. Maya stood, brushing rain from her jeans. Eat it or don't, your choice. But I'll be back tomorrow night with more, so you might as well get used to it. She walked away before Zuri could respond. Zuri waited until she was gone, then grabbed the bag. Inside was a container of pasta with meat sauce, a roll, and a chocolate chip cookie. Her hands shook as she opened it. Marcus sat in his security office watching surveillance footage on multiple screens. His head of security, a former cop named James Brennan, stood beside him with a tablet. "We've checked every database we have access to," Brennan said. "No birth certificate, no school enrollment, no medical records. The girl doesn't exist on paper. What about facial recognition?" "Nothing. She's a ghost." Brennan scrolled through his notes. "But I did find something interesting. Remember that community shelter fire about 6 years ago? The one on Bridgeway Street?" Marcus's stomach tightened. "Yes. That shelter was funded by Hale Industries, your company. After it burned down, 40 people were displaced. Most of them disappeared into the streets. No follow-up, no rebuilding." Brennan looked up from his tablet. "You think maybe the girl's mother was one of them?" Marcus stared at the frozen image of Zuri on the screen, her face captured mid-run as she fled the restaurant. Something about Brennan's words struck deep. The shelter. Bridgeway Street. The same area where Zuri had been living. "Keep digging," Marcus said. "I want to know everything about that fire. Who started it? What happened to the residents? All of it." "Yes, sir." After Brennan left, Marcus pulled out the photograph again. He studied the woman's face more carefully this time. Young, maybe mid-20s in the photo. Dark eyes, high cheekbones, a scar barely visible on her left temple. Something about her features tickled his memory, but he couldn't place it. His phone buzzed. A text from his board chairman. "Emergency meeting tomorrow, 9 a.m. non-negotiable." Marcus deleted it without responding. Officer Grant found Zuri 3 days later near the subway station on 5th and Main. She was sitting against the tiled wall, counting coins someone had tossed into her upturned hat. 17 cents. Barely enough for anything. Grant approached slowly, hands visible. He'd been a cop for 8 years and learned that sudden movements scared homeless kids. They were like wild animals, always ready to bolt. "Hey there," he said gently. "Remember me?" Zuri looked up and her expression immediately closed off. "I didn't do anything wrong." "I know. I'm not here to arrest you." He sat down beside her, keeping some distance. "I just wanted to talk." "About what?" "About what happened at the restaurant." Grant pulled out a protein bar from his pocket. "You hungry?" Zuri eyed the bar but didn't reach for it. "I don't need pity." "It's not pity. I'm just offering food to someone who needs it, same as Mr. Hale did." He set the bar between them. "You know, he's been looking for you." That got her attention. "Why?" "I think he feels bad about what happened, about you running away scared." Grant leaned back against the wall. "He found something you dropped, a photograph." Zuri's eyes went wide. "He has my picture?" "Yeah, of you and your mom, I think." Tears welled up before she could stop them. "That's the only one I had. The only one." Grant felt something crack in his chest. He'd seen a lot of heartbreak in his years on the force, but something about this kid got to him. Maybe it was how small she looked. Maybe it was the way she tried so hard to be tough when she was clearly terrified. "If you want it back, I can help arrange that," he said carefully. "Mr. Hale's not trying to get you in trouble. He just wants to help." "That's what they all say." Zuri grabbed the protein bar and stood up. "Then they call child services, and you end up in a group home where the older kids steal your stuff and the staff don't care if you're hungry." She started walking away. "Tell Mr. Hale I don't need his help." Grant watched her disappear into the crowd of commuters. He pulled out his phone and dialed Marcus's number. "Did you find her?" Marcus answered immediately. "Yeah, and she wants nothing to do with you." That night, Zuri did something she knew was stupid. She went back to the restaurant. Not through the front door this time, but through the alley. The delivery entrance was locked now, but she found an unlocked window near the dumpsters. She squeezed through, landing on a pile of folded tablecloths in the storage room. Her heart pounded as she crept through the dark building. The restaurant was closed, empty, lit only by emergency exit signs. She made her way to the dining room, to the booth where she'd eaten, where she'd dropped her photograph. She searched the floor with shaking hands, under the table, between the cushions, anywhere it might have fallen. Nothing. Of course there was nothing. Days had passed. It was gone. But she couldn't leave. Not yet. She pulled out a rag she'd found in the storage room and started cleaning, wiping down tables, straightening chairs, picking up a few stray napkins. It was stupid, she knew. But when that man, Mr. Hale, had given her food, no one had ever done something like that before. Someone rich and powerful, stopping everything to help her. The least she could do was clean up the mess she'd made, leave things better than she found them. She was halfway through wiping down the bar when the lights suddenly blazed on. Zuri spun around, dropping the rag. Marcus Hale stood in the doorway, still wearing his suit from dinner, his tie loosened. He stared at her, and she stared back. "I wasn't stealing," Zuri said quickly. "I was just cleaning. I swear I wasn't." "I know." His voice was quiet. "I saw you on the security cameras." Zuri's eyes darted toward the exit. "I'll leave. I'm sorry, I'll just—" The room spun suddenly. Black spots danced in her vision, her legs turned to rubber, and the floor rushed up to meet her. The last thing she heard before everything went dark was Marcus shouting her name. The hospital room was too bright, too white. Zuri's eyes fluttered open, and panic seized her immediately. Hospital meant questions. Questions meant child services. Child services meant losing her freedom. She tried to sit up, but a hand gently pressed her shoulder back down. "Easy," Marcus said. He sat in a chair beside the bed, his expression drawn and tired. "You're safe. Just rest." "I need to go," Zuri said, her voice weak. "I can't be here. You collapsed from exhaustion and malnutrition. The doctor said you're severely dehydrated and possibly anemic." His voice cracked slightly. "When's the last time you had a real meal? A real night's sleep?" Zuri turned her face away. "Doesn't matter. It matters to me." "Why?" She looked at him then, searching his face. "Why do you care? You don't even know me." Marcus opened his mouth, then closed it. Why did he care? He'd asked himself the same question 100 times, but sitting here, looking at this child who'd fought so hard just to survive, he realized the answer wasn't complicated. "Because no one should have to live the way you're living," he said simply. "Especially not a kid." Zuri's eyes filled with tears. She blinked them back furiously. "I'm fine on my own." "No, you're not. You literally just collapsed." Before Zuri could respond, the door opened. Claire Hale stepped inside, her designer purse slung over one shoulder. She stopped when she saw Zuri awake, her expression carefully neutral. "The doctors want to keep her overnight for observation," Claire said to Marcus. "I spoke with the head nurse." Marcus nodded. "Good." Claire's gaze moved to Zuri, and something flickered across her face. Pain, maybe, or recognition of pain. "What's your name?" she asked, her voice softer than expected. "Zuri." "That's a beautiful name." Claire moved closer, but not too close. "Are you feeling any better?" Zuri nodded slightly. She didn't know what to make of this woman. She was dressed like money, perfect hair and makeup, but her eyes looked sad. Really sad. "You're projecting, Marcus," Claire said quietly, though Zuri could hear her. "She's not him." Marcus's jaw tightened. "I know that." "Do you?" Claire's voice dropped even lower, but Zuri's ears were sharp from years of eavesdropping. Because you couldn't save Daniel, and now you think saving her will somehow make that right, but it won't. Nothing will. The words hung in the air like broken glass. Zuri saw Marcus flinch, saw the way his hands clenched into fists. She saw the woman's eyes glisten with tears she refused to shed. "I'll be in the car," Claire said, and left. The silence that followed was heavy. Zuri wanted to say something, but what? She didn't understand what they were talking about, didn't know who Daniel was, but she understood loss. She understood the kind of pain that never really healed. "You should rest," Marcus said finally, standing up. His composure had cracked slightly, showing something raw underneath. "I'll make sure you're taken care of tonight." He started toward the door, but Zuri's voice stopped him. "Mr. Hale?" He turned back. "Do you really have my picture? The one of me and my mama?" Marcus reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out the photograph. He walked back to the bed and carefully placed it on the blanket beside her hand. Zuri grabbed it like it was made of gold, pressing it against her chest. "Thank you," she whispered, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. "Thank you so much." Marcus nodded, his throat too tight to speak. He left quickly, before she could see his own eyes burning. Outside in the hallway, he leaned against the wall and tried to steady his breathing. Claire was right. He was projecting, trying to save this girl because he couldn't save his son. But knowing that didn't make him want to help her any less. His phone buzzed. Another message from the board chairman. "Your behavior is becoming a liability. We need to talk about your position as CEO." Marcus stared at the message for a long moment, then turned his phone off completely. Right now, board meetings and stock prices felt very far away. All that mattered was the small girl in the hospital room, finally sleeping peacefully, clutching a photograph like it was the most precious thing in the world. Because for her, it was. Zuri woke to the sound of beeping monitors and hushed voices. Morning light filtered through the hospital blinds, painting stripes across the white sheets. For a moment she forgot where she was. Then memory crashed back, along with the familiar knot of fear in her stomach. The doctors came in first, a team of 3 wearing matching white coats and concerned expressions. They checked her vital signs, asked questions she barely answered, and spoke in medical terms she didn't understand. Severe malnutrition, dehydration, possible anemia, vitamin deficiencies. Each word felt like an accusation. Marcus arrived around noon, carrying a stuffed bear that looked out of place in his expensive suit. He set it awkwardly on the chair beside Zuri's bed. "The gift shop didn't have much," he said. "I thought maybe." Zuri stared at the bear but didn't reach for it. She'd learned not to accept things too easily. Gifts always came with strings attached. "The doctors say you need to stay another day or 2. Marcus continued, sitting down. "Just until you're stronger." "Then what?" Zuri's voice came out harder than she intended. "You gonna call child services? Put me in the system?" "I haven't called anyone. I just want to make sure you're okay." "I'm fine." "Zuri." Marcus leaned forward, his expression serious. "You collapsed. You're severely malnourished. That's not fine." She turned her face away, jaw clenched. "I've survived this long on my own. You shouldn't have to just survive. You're a kid. You should be in school, playing with friends, eating 3 meals a day." His voice softened. "You should be safe." The word safe hit her like a punch. When had she ever been safe? Not since Mama died. Not since the shelter closed. Not since she'd learned that the world didn't care about little black girls with nowhere to go. "Why do you care?" she asked, still not looking at him. "You don't know me." Marcus was quiet for a long moment. "Because someone should." The simplicity of the answer made Zuri's throat tighten. She blinked hard against the burning in her eyes. The door opened again, and this time Claire Hale walked in. She looked different from yesterday, softer somehow. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and she wore jeans instead of a designer dress. She carried a tray from the hospital cafeteria. "I brought you something better than hospital food," Claire said, setting the tray on the rolling table. "Grilled cheese and tomato soup. Nothing fancy, but it's warm." Zuri stared at the food, then at Claire. "Why are you being nice to me?" Claire's expression flickered with something painful. "Because I know what it's like to feel alone." She pulled up another chair. "And because my husband is right, even though I don't like admitting it. You deserve better than this." The tension in the room was thick. Zuri could feel something unspoken passing between Marcus and Claire, something heavy with history and hurt. But Claire's eyes, when they looked at Zuri, held genuine kindness. "Eat," Claire said gently, "before it gets cold." Zuri ate slowly, savoring each bite. The grilled cheese was perfectly crispy, the soup rich and warm. As she ate, Claire and Marcus talked quietly about things that didn't matter much, filling the silence with normal conversation. It felt strange, almost like what a family might sound like. When Maya arrived after her shift, she found all three of them there. She'd brought a backpack filled with clothes from a thrift store, toiletries, and a hairbrush. "Figured you might want to clean up," Maya said, setting the backpack on the bed. "There's a shower in the bathroom. Take your time." Zuri looked at the gifts surrounding her. The stuffed bear, the food, the clothes, the kindness. It was too much. Way too much. "I can't pay you back," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "For any of this." Maya smiled. "Nobody's asking you to." But that was exactly what scared Zuri. In her experience, people always wanted something back. Always. Later that evening, after Maya had helped her shower and dress in clean clothes, Zuri sat on the hospital bed feeling like a different person. The clothes were simple, just jeans and a soft purple sweater, but they were clean and they fit. Her hair was brushed and pulled back in two neat braids, courtesy of Maya's patient hands. Marcus had stepped out to take a phone call. Through the door, Zuri could hear his voice rising, angry. She caught fragments. Board meeting. Irresponsible. Liability. He was in trouble. Because of her. When he came back in, his jaw was tight, but he forced a smile. "Everything okay?" Zuri nodded, but guilt twisted in her stomach. "Are you in trouble? Because you helped me?" Marcus hesitated, then sat down. "Some people don't understand why I'm doing this. They think it's bad for business. Maybe you should stop then. I don't want you to lose your job because of me." "I'm not going to lose my job." He said it with confidence, but Zuri heard the uncertainty underneath. "And even if I did, helping you would still be the right thing to do." Claire stood by the window, watching the city lights below. "Marcus," she said quietly, "we need to talk about what happens next." "What do you mean?" "We can't keep her in the hospital forever, and she can't go back to the streets." Claire turned to face them. "We need a real plan." Zuri's heart started racing. "I told you, I'm not going into the system." "Nobody said anything about the system," Marcus said. "But Claire's right. We need to figure out something better." "There's a children's shelter on the east side," Claire offered. "It's supposed to be good. Clean, safe, decent staff." "No." Zuri's voice came out sharp. "I've been in shelters before. They're not safe. The older kids steal your stuff, beat you up if you look at them wrong. The staff don't care as long as you're quiet." "This one is different," Claire insisted. "They're all the same." Zuri pulled her knees to her chest. "You don't know what it's like." Silence fell. Claire and Marcus exchanged a long look, communicating something Zuri couldn't decipher. "Then we'll figure out something else," Marcus said finally. "But you can't keep living on the streets. That's not negotiable." Zuri wanted to argue, but exhaustion washed over her. The clean clothes, the warm food, the soft bed. It all made her realize how tired she really was. how tired she'd been for so long. "Can I ask you something?" she said quietly. "Of course. Who's Daniel?" The air in the room turned to ice. Claire's face went pale. Marcus looked like he'd been struck. "I heard you talking yesterday," Zuri said quickly. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to listen, but—" "Daniel was our son," Claire said, her voice hollow. "He died 3 years ago. He was 7. "I'm sorry," Zuri whispered. "He would have been 10 now," Marcus said. "About your age." The pieces clicked together in Zuri's mind. That's why they were helping her. She reminded them of their dead son. She wasn't special. She was just a replacement, a way to fill a hole that could never be filled. The realization hurt more than she expected. "I'm not him," Zuri said, her voice trembling. "I can't be him." "We know that," Marcus said quickly. "That's not what this is about." But his words rang hollow. Zuri turned her face to the wall, clutching her mother's photograph. The stuffed bear stared at her with glassy eyes, a gift meant for a different child. A child who was gone. That night, after Marcus and Claire left, Zuri lay awake in the dark hospital room. Through the window, she could see the city sprawling below, millions of lights marking millions of lives. Somewhere down there was the overpass where she usually slept, the dumpster behind the restaurant, the subway station where she counted coins. Her old life was calling her back. At least there, she knew the rules. At least there, nobody pretended to care when they really just wanted to fix their own broken hearts. She looked at the photograph of her mother one more time, then tucked it carefully into the pocket of her new jeans. Tomorrow, when they weren't watching, she'd leave. It was better that way. For everyone. The previous night's decision to leave still weighed on Zuri's mind when morning came. But before she could act on it, Officer Grant arrived with a manila folder tucked under his arm. His expression was serious, almost grim. Marcus was already there, having arrived early with breakfast from a nearby diner. "We need to talk," Grant said, closing the door behind him. "All of us." Marcus set down the coffee he'd been drinking. "What did you find?" Grant glanced at Zuri, hesitation crossing his face. "Maybe the kid shouldn't hear this. If it's about me, I should hear it," Zuri said, sitting up straighter. Grant sighed and opened the folder. "I did some digging into your background, trying to find any family, any records. I found something, but it's not good news." He pulled out a document, yellowed with age. "Your mother's name was Adele Freeman. Does that sound right?" Zuri nodded slowly. "Mama's name was Adele. She died 6 years ago. The medical examiner ruled it as complications from pneumonia, but there's more to the story." Grant pulled out another document, this one with a legal header. Before she died, she was part of a class action lawsuit against a property development company. The lawsuit claimed that unsafe housing conditions led to multiple tenant deaths. Marcus's face had gone pale. "What company?" Grant met his eyes. "Hale Industries." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Zuri looked between the two men, not understanding. "What does that mean?" "It means," Grant said carefully, "that your mother lived in a building owned by Mr. Hale's company. A building that had serious problems. Black mold, faulty heating, structural issues. The tenants complained for months, but nothing was fixed." "That's not possible," Marcus said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I would have known." "Would you?" Grant pulled out more documents. "According to these files, the complaints went to your property management division. They reported everything as handled, but nothing was actually done." Marcus grabbed the papers, his hands shaking as he read. Complaint forms. Work orders marked as completed. Tenant letters begging for help. And there, at the bottom of one report, was his signature on an oversight document dated 7 years ago. "I trusted them," Marcus said. "I trusted my managers to handle these properties correctly. I never thought—" You never thought to check, Grant finished. And people died because of it. 12 people, including Adele Freeman. Zuri felt like the floor had dropped out from under her. She stared at Marcus, the man who'd fed her, who'd sat by her hospital bed, who'd promised to help her. The man whose company had killed her mother. You, she whispered. You killed my mama. Zuri, I didn't know. You didn't care. Her voice rose, cracking. She wrote letters. She begged for help. And nobody came because you were too busy being rich to care about people like us. Marcus reached toward her, but she flinched away. Don't touch me. Don't ever touch me. Grant stepped between them. Kid, I know this is hard, but Mr. Hale didn't directly. He owned the building. Zuri's eyes burned with tears she refused to let fall. His name was on the papers. He's responsible. She was right. Marcus knew she was right. All these years he'd built his empire on the backs of people he never saw, never thought about. He'd trusted other people to do the right thing while he focused on profit margins and expansion plans. And people had died. Adele Freeman had died, leaving her daughter alone and homeless. I'm sorry, Marcus said, his voice breaking. Zuri, I am so sorry. Sorry doesn't bring her back. Zuri's hands clenched into fists. Sorry doesn't change anything. The door opened suddenly. Claire stood there, having heard the shouting from the hallway. She looked at Marcus's devastated face, at the papers scattered across the bed, at Zuri's expression of betrayal and rage. What happened? She asked. He killed my mama, Zuri said, her voice cold and flat. And then he pretended to care about me. Claire's eyes widened as she pieced it together. She looked at Marcus, and something in her expression shifted. Not anger exactly. Something harder to define. Is this true? I didn't know, Marcus said. I swear to God, Claire, I didn't know. But it was your company, your responsibility. Her voice was quiet, but it cut like a knife. How could you not know? I trusted the wrong people. I wasn't paying attention. He stopped, the excuses dying in his throat. There's no excuse. She's right. I'm responsible. Claire moved to Zuri's bedside but kept her distance. What do you want to do? She asked the girl. It's your choice. Zuri looked at her, surprised by the question. What do you mean? This is your life. Your story. Do you want to press charges? Do you want to go public with this? Do you want us to leave you alone? Claire's eyes were sad but clear. Whatever you decide, we'll respect it. For a moment, Zuri was tempted to say yes to all of it. Press charges, ruin him, make him pay for what happened. But as she looked at Marcus's face, at the genuine anguish there, something in her hesitated. I don't know, she admitted. I don't know. You don't have to decide right now, Grant said. But there's something else you should know. The lawsuit your mother was part of, it never went to trial. The company settled out of court. The tenants were supposed to receive compensation, including families of the deceased. We never got any money, Zuri said. That's because your mother died before the settlement was finalized. And since there was no other guardian listed for you, no next of kin, the money went into a state fund. Grant pulled out one more document. But it's still there, waiting for you. $50,000. The number meant nothing to Zuri. She'd never had more than a few dollars at once. 50,000 might as well be $1 million. That's your money, Grant continued. Once we get you into the system properly, with a legal guardian, you can access it. I don't want his blood money, Zuri said. It's not his money, it's your mother's. She fought for it. She wanted you to have a better life. Grant's voice softened. Don't let pride keep you from what's rightfully yours. Marcus stood abruptly, unable to sit still any longer. I need to make this right. I don't know how, but I have to. You can't make this right, Zuri said. Some things can't be fixed. Maybe not, but I can try. He looked at Grant. What would it take to reopen that case? To do a full investigation into what happened? Marcus, don't, Claire warned. Your lawyers will never allow it. I don't care what they allow. People died because of my negligence. That needs to be acknowledged publicly. He turned to Zuri. You deserve the truth. Everyone does. This will destroy you, Claire said. The board will remove you. The media will crucify you. Everything you've built is built on suffering. I chose to ignore. Marcus's voice was firm now, resolved. If that's what it takes to do the right thing, then so be it. Zuri stared at him, trying to understand. This man had killed her mother, even if he hadn't meant to. He'd let her suffer while he got rich. But now he was willing to lose everything to make it right. It didn't bring Mama back. It didn't change the past. But it was something. I want to leave, Zuri said suddenly. I need to think. You can't go back to the streets, Claire said. I'm not going to the streets. Maya said I could stay with her for a few days. It was a lie. But she needed to get out of this hospital room, away from these people and their guilt and their good intentions. Grant looked uncertain. I'm not sure that's... Let her go, Marcus said quietly. She's right. She needs space. He looked at Zuri. But please, take this. He pulled out his wallet and took out several bills. Just in case you need anything. Zuri wanted to refuse, wanted to throw his money in his face. But practical survival won out over pride. She took the money without a word and stuffed it in her pocket. As she gathered the few things she had, the photograph, the new clothes, Claire stopped her at the door. For what it's worth, Claire said, I think you're incredibly brave. And I think your mother would be proud of the person you're becoming. Zuri's throat tightened. She nodded once and left. That afternoon, Marcus called an emergency press conference. His PR team begged him to reconsider. His lawyers threatened to quit. The board chairman called 6 times, each message more furious than the last. Marcus ignored them all. He stood in front of 20 reporters and twice as many cameras, and told the truth. About the lawsuit, about the unsafe housing, about the 12 people who died, including Adele Freeman, about his failure to oversee his own company properly, about the little girl who'd stolen food from his restaurant, not knowing that his negligence had orphaned her. The room erupted in questions, but Marcus just said, I take full responsibility. Hale Industries will reopen the investigation and provide additional compensation to all affected families. I will personally ensure that this never happens again. By the time he finished, his phone was exploding with notifications. The board had called an emergency vote. He was being removed as CEO, effective immediately. The stock price was plummeting. His lawyers were in full panic mode. Claire watched it all from their penthouse apartment, her expression unreadable. When Marcus came home that night, exhausted and shell-shocked, she poured him a glass of whiskey and sat beside him on the couch. That was either the bravest or stupidest thing you've ever done, she said. Probably both. The board voted unanimously. You're out. Marcus nodded. He'd expected it. Good riddance. Claire studied his face. You really mean that? I do. He took a sip of whiskey, letting it burn down his throat. I've spent 20 years building something I'm ashamed of. Maybe it's time to build something better. For the first time in years, Claire smiled at him. Really smiled. Maybe it is. Across the city, in a drainage tunnel under the Bridgeway overpass, Zuri sat alone in the dark. Officer Grant had found her backpack near a storm drain earlier, making everyone think she'd fallen in. She'd hidden it there on purpose, buying herself time to think. The money Marcus had given her was spread out on the ground. $200. More than she'd ever had. Enough to get a bus ticket somewhere far away. Enough to start over. But the photograph of her mother stared up at her in the dim light. Mama, smiling and happy, holding baby Zuri like she was the most precious thing in the world. What would Mama want her to do? Zuri closed her eyes and let herself cry. For Mama. For herself. For the man whose money couldn't buy back the past, for all the broken pieces that could never quite fit together again. When dawn came, she still didn't have an answer, but she knew one thing for certain. Running away wouldn't change anything. The truth was out now, and somehow, she had to figure out how to live with it. After discovering Zuri's backpack near the storm drain, Marcus stood in the pouring rain, red and blue lights flashing across his face. The storm had rolled in fast, turning the streets into rivers. Officer Grant coordinated with 2 other patrol cars, their radios crackling with static and urgent voices. "We need to find her," Marcus said, his voice trembling. "She's just a child. We can't lose her." Grant's jaw was tight. "We've got units checking all her usual spots. The overpass, the subway stations, the alleys near your restaurant. Someone will find her." But hours passed with no sign of Zuri. The rain only got worse, wind whipping through the city streets. Marcus drove from location to location, peering into dark corners and abandoned buildings, calling her name until his voice went hoarse. Each empty spot felt like a failure, another way he'd let her down. Around midnight, a car pulled up beside his. Claire stepped out in rain boots and a waterproof jacket, her hair already plastered to her face. "What are you doing here?" Marcus asked. "If you think you're the only one who cares, you're wrong." She grabbed a flashlight from her car. "Where haven't you checked yet?" Marcus stared at his wife, something shifting in his chest. "The old community. Shelter. The one that burned down. It's on Bridgeway Street." "Then let's go." They drove together through the storm, windshield wipers struggling against the downpour. Neither spoke, but the silence felt different than the cold distance that had existed between them for years. This was a shared purpose, a shared fear. Meanwhile, across the city, Maya was printing flyers at a 24-hour copy shop. Zuri's face stared back from the paper, a photo Maya had taken on her phone during one of their meetings. Missing, Zuri Freeman, 10 years old. She'd already posted them at 3 shelters and 2 soup kitchens. Her phone rang. It was Officer Grant. "Any luck?" Maya asked. "Nothing yet. You?" "I'm hitting every shelter in the district. Someone has to have seen her." Maya's voice cracked slightly. "She can't just disappear. She's too smart for that." "Smart kids do desperate things when they're scared," Grant said. "Keep looking. I'll call if we find anything." Maya hung up and headed back into the rain, her stack of flyers getting damp despite the plastic bag she carried them in. At each shelter, she asked the same questions, got the same head shakes. No one had seen Zuri. It was like she'd vanished into the storm. Zuri, meanwhile, sat huddled in the ruins of the old community shelter on Bridgeway Street. The building was a skeleton, blackened beams reaching toward the sky like burned fingers. Part of the roof still stood, providing minimal shelter from the rain. She'd found a corner where the walls met, creating a small dry spot among the rubble. Her mother's photograph was clutched in one hand, Marcus's money in the other. She'd been here for hours, since before the storm started, hiding from the world and from the impossible choice in front of her. Trust the people who'd caused her mother's death or run away and survive alone like she'd always done. The photograph's edges were worn soft from years of handling. Mama looked so happy in it, so full of life. Zuri tried to remember her voice, the way she used to sing while cooking, the warmth of her hugs. But the memories were fading, slipping away like water through her fingers. "I don't know what to do, Mama," she whispered. "I'm so tired of being alone. But how can I trust them?" The wind howled through the broken building, and somewhere in the darkness something creaked ominously. Zuri pulled her knees tighter to her chest, trying to stay warm. The new clothes Maya had given her were already soaked through. Back at the shelter ruins, Marcus and Claire picked their way through the rubble, flashlights cutting through the darkness. The rain had let up slightly, but water dripped from every surface, creating an eerie percussion. "This place," Marcus said, his voice hollow. "I funded this shelter 7 years ago. $50,000 donated to help the homeless. I never came here, never checked on it. Just wrote the check and forgot about it." Claire shone her light across the charred walls. "You can't save everyone, Marcus. You've learned that the hard way. But I could have saved some of them. Adele. The others." He stopped walking, suddenly overwhelmed. "Do you know how many people I've failed? How many lives I destroyed because I was too busy chasing profit to care?" Claire turned to face him, rain dripping from her hair. "You want me to absolve you? I can't. What happened here was terrible, and you bear responsibility for it. But destroying yourself won't bring any of them back. Then what do I do? You start with one person. You find that little girl and you help her. Not because it makes you feel better. Not because it erases your guilt, but because she deserves it." Claire's voice softened. "And because somewhere in this mess, I think you've remembered how to be human again." Marcus looked at his wife, really looked at her, for the first time in months. "When did you get so wise?" "Around the same time you stopped being so arrogant." A small smile touched her lips, barely visible in the dark. "Come on, let's keep looking." They moved deeper into the ruins, calling Zuri's name. Their voices echoed off broken walls, unanswered. Marcus was about to suggest they try another location when Claire's flashlight caught something. A small figure huddled in a corner, nearly invisible against the blackened walls. "Marcus," Claire breathed. "There." They rushed over. Zuri was unconscious, her breathing shallow, her skin cold to the touch. Marcus's hand was shaking as he checked her pulse. It was there, faint but steady. "Call 911, he said urgently. "Now." Claire was already dialing, her voice crisp and clear as she gave their location. Marcus carefully lifted Zuri into his arms. She was so light, too light. Her hand still clutched something. The photograph of her mother and his business card, crumpled and damp. "I've got you," Marcus whispered. "You're safe now. I promise." Zuri's eyes fluttered open for just a moment. She looked at Marcus, her expression confused and afraid. "You said you'd help me," she mumbled, her voice barely audible. "But you're just like the rest." The words hit Marcus harder than any board vote, any financial loss. He held her closer as the ambulance sirens wailed in the distance. "You're right," he said, even though she'd slipped back into unconsciousness. "But I'm trying to be better. Please give me a chance to be better." The ambulance arrived within minutes. Paramedics took over, checking Zuri's vitals, wrapping her in heated blankets, starting an IV. Marcus and Claire followed the ambulance to the hospital, their hands finding each other in the space between their seats. At the hospital, doctors rushed Zuri into emergency care. She was severely dehydrated, hypothermic, and her earlier malnutrition had been made worse by days without proper food. The medical team worked quickly, efficiently, while Marcus and Claire waited in a sterile hallway that smelled of disinfectant and fear. Officer Grant arrived an hour later, followed by Maya. They'd both gotten the call. The four of them sat in uncomfortable plastic chairs, saying little, united by worry for a little girl who'd stolen her way into all their hearts. "Is she going to be okay?" Maya asked, her eyes red from crying. "The doctors think so," Claire said, "but she needs time to recover." Grant leaned back in his chair, exhausted. "When she wakes up, we need to talk about her future. Child Services is already asking questions." "No," Marcus said firmly. "She's not going into the system. That's not your call to make." "Then I'll make it mine." Marcus stood, pacing. "I'll petition for custody. Claire and I both will." Claire looked up at him, surprised. "Marcus, we haven't discussed." "I know. but I'm done watching from the sidelines. That little girl needs a home, needs people who care about her. We can be those people, if you're willing." Claire was quiet for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then she stood and took Marcus's hand. "If we do this, we do it right. Not as a replacement for Daniel, not as redemption for your past, but because she deserves a family who loves her for who she is." "Agreed." Grant shook his head. "You two realize it's not that simple? The courts will investigate. Your connection to her mother's death, the scandal, Marcus losing his position as CEO. None of that looks good. Then we'll fight," Marcus said. "Whatever it takes." Maya smiled through her tears. "I'll testify. I'll tell them everything about how Zuri tried to clean the restaurant, how she refused charity, how much courage she has. I'll support the petition, too," Grant added, "for what it's worth." They waited 3 more hours before a doctor finally emerged, pulling off latex gloves as she approached. "She's stable," the doctor said. "We've got her on fluids and antibiotics. She'll need to stay here for at least a week, but she should make a full recovery." Relief washed through the group. Marcus felt his knees go weak. "Can we see her?" Claire asked. "She's sleeping, but you can sit with her for a few minutes, just 2 at a time." Marcus and Claire entered the hospital room together. Zuri looked impossibly small in the hospital bed, surrounded by monitors and IV lines. Her face was peaceful in sleep, younger somehow, vulnerable. Claire pulled up a chair and sat beside the bed. "She's been through so much." "Too much," Marcus agreed. "No child should have to survive what she's survived. When she wakes up, she's going to push us away. You know that, right?" Claire looked at her husband. "She's going to test us, make us prove we're not going to abandon her. Then we prove it, every day, for as long as it takes." Claire reached out and gently brushed a strand of hair from Zuri's forehead. The gesture was tender, maternal. Marcus saw tears in his wife's eyes. "I'm scared," Claire admitted. "Scared of failing another child. Scared of not being enough." "We'll be enough together," Marcus said. "We have to be." When Zuri woke the next day, she turned her face away from Marcus. The memory of their last conversation hung heavy between them. The truth about her mother's death, the betrayal, the anger. She'd heard his promise in the ruins, heard him say he was trying to be better. But words were cheap. Actions mattered. "How are you feeling?" Marcus asked gently. Zuri didn't answer. She stared at the wall, her jaw set, refusing to engage. Over the next few days, this became the pattern. Doctors came and went. Nurses checked her vitals. Maya visited every evening after work. Officer Grant stopped by with books and magazines, but Zuri remained silent, withdrawn, building walls that nobody could scale. A social worker named Mrs. Patterson arrived on the 3rd day. She was a middle-aged white woman with kind eyes and a no-nonsense attitude. She sat by Zuri's bed with a tablet and a stack of forms. "Hello, Zuri. My name is Linda Patterson. I'm with Child Services. I need to ask you some questions about your situation." Zuri finally spoke. "I'm not going to foster care. That's not necessarily where you'll end up. We have options." Mrs. Patterson pulled up some information on her tablet. "There's a group home on the east side that has an opening. It's well-run, good reviews, and they specialize in helping children who've experienced trauma." "No. Zuri, I understand you're angry and scared, but you need a safe place to live while we sort out your legal situation. The settlement money from your mother's case needs a proper guardian before it can be accessed." "I don't want the money, and I don't want a group home." Mrs. Patterson sighed. "What do you want?" Zuri turned to look at her finally. "I want my mama back. I want to not be hungry all the time. I want to sleep without being scared someone's going to hurt me. But I can't have any of that, so what I want doesn't matter." "It matters to me," a voice said from the doorway. Claire stood there holding a small bowl. She'd been coming every morning, bringing food, sitting quietly, never pushing, never demanding attention. Just present. "I made you something," Claire said, walking over. "Rice with a little butter and salt, like the meal you first ate at the restaurant. I thought maybe a warm version would be nice." Zuri stared at the bowl. It smelled good, simple, and comforting. She didn't want to take it, didn't want to accept anything from these people. But her stomach betrayed her, growling loudly. Mrs. Patterson excused herself, giving them privacy. Claire set the bowl on the rolling table and sat down in the visitor's chair. "Why are you nice to me?" Zuri asked, the same question she'd asked before. "Because someone once saved me when I didn't think I deserved it," Claire answered. "I was 16, pregnant, thrown out by my parents. I lived in my car for 2 months until a stranger saw me crying at a gas station. She took me home, let me stay until I got on my feet, helped me place my baby for adoption." Claire's voice was steady but sad. "She didn't have to help me, but she did, and it changed everything." Zuri absorbed this information, seeing Claire differently. "What happened to the baby?" "I hope she's out there somewhere, happy and loved." Claire smiled softly. "I think about her sometimes. Wonder if she ever thinks about me." "Do you regret it, giving her up?" "Every day. But I also know it was the right choice at the time. I wasn't ready to be a mother. I couldn't give her what she needed." Claire met Zuri's eyes. "I spent years telling myself I didn't deserve to be a parent. Then I met Marcus, and we had Daniel. He taught me I was wrong, and when we lost him, I forgot that lesson again." Zuri picked up the spoon and took a small bite of rice. It was perfect, warm and buttery, seasoned just right. "I'm not your second chance," Zuri said quietly. "I'm not going to replace your son." "I know. And we're not trying to replace your mother." Claire leaned forward. "But maybe we could be something new, something that honors both of them by being honest about who we all are." The door opened again. Marcus entered, looking uncertain. He'd been giving Zuri space, only visiting when she was asleep or when others were present. Now he carried a sketchbook and a set of colored pencils. "The nurse said you liked to draw," he said, setting them on the bedside table. "I thought maybe you'd want something to do besides watch TV." Zuri looked at the supplies, then at Marcus. His face was haggard, older than it had been 2 weeks ago. There were dark circles under his eyes, and his expensive suit had been replaced with jeans and a plain shirt. He looked human, vulnerable, broken in ways that money couldn't fix. "Officer Grant told me about the press conference," Zuri said, "about you losing your job." Marcus nodded. "The board voted me out, unanimously. Because of me. No, because of choices I made years ago. Choices that led to your mother's death and the deaths of others. You didn't cause that. I did." Marcus sat down heavily. "And I'd make the same choice again. The truth needed to come out." "Maya says you're going broke," Zuri continued, watching his reaction. "Not broke, but much less rich than I was." A wry smile touched his lips. "Turns out I don't need a penthouse and 3 cars. Who knew?" Despite herself, Zuri almost smiled. "What are you going to do now?" "I don't know yet, but first, I want to make sure you're okay, that you have somewhere safe to live, people who care about you." He hesitated. "Claire and I would like to petition for custody, to become your legal guardians." Zuri's heart hammered in her chest. "Why?" "Because we care about you. Because you deserve better than the system. Because—" Marcus stopped, choosing his words carefully. "Because helping you is the first thing I've done in years that actually matters. You barely know me. Then we'll get to know you, if you'll let us." Zuri set down her spoon, her appetite gone. "What if I don't want to? What if I just want to take the settlement money and leave?" "Then we'll help you do that," Claire said. "We'll make sure you have a good lawyer, that the money is protected, that you have resources, whatever you need. You'd just let me go? This isn't about what we want, Zuri. It's about what's best for you. Marcus's voice was firm but kind. We're offering you a home, a family, stability. But if that's not what you need, we won't force it. Zuri looked between them, searching for the lie, the catch, the hidden agenda. But all she saw was sincerity and hope and fear that mirrored her own. I need to think, she said finally. Take all the time you need, Claire said. They left her alone with the rice and the sketchbook, and her thoughts. Zuri finished eating slowly, then picked up the pencils. She opened the sketchbook to a fresh page and started drawing. Her hand moved almost without conscious thought, creating lines and shapes that slowly became recognizable forms. When she finished an hour later, she stared at what she'd created. Marcus and Claire sitting together on a couch. And beside them, a small girl with braids. Not perfect, not idealized. Just three people who might, maybe, possibly, become something like a family. She tore the page out carefully and set it aside. The next morning, news broke about Marcus and Claire's custody petition. The media went wild. Some outlets praised their compassion. Others accused them of trying to buy redemption. Social media exploded with opinions, think pieces, hot takes. Everyone had something to say about the billionaire who'd lost everything, and the homeless girl he was trying to save. A reporter shouted a question at Marcus as he left the courthouse after filing the preliminary papers. Mr. Hale, do you think one girl can fix your image? Marcus stopped and turned to face the cameras. His voice was steady and clear. She already fixed my soul. My image can burn for all I care. The clip went viral, within hours. Zuri watched it on the hospital room TV, Maya sitting beside her. She watched Marcus's face, the conviction in his voice, the way he didn't flinch from the cameras. He means it, Maya said softly. I've known a lot of rich people who fake caring. Marcus isn't faking. How do you know? Because fake caring stops when it becomes inconvenient. Real caring costs you everything. Maya squeezed Zuri's hand. He's lost his company, his reputation, his fortune, and he's still here, still fighting for you. Zuri was quiet for a long time. Then she reached over and picked up the drawing she'd made. Can you give this to him? Don't tell him it's from me. Just leave it somewhere, he'll find it. Maya looked at the drawing and smiled. He's going to cry when he sees this. Good, Zuri said. But there was a softness in her voice that hadn't been there before. That evening, Marcus found the drawing on the front seat of his car. He stared at it for a full minute, then pressed his hands against his face as tears leaked through his fingers. Claire found him like that, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Marcus? What's wrong? He couldn't speak. He just handed her the drawing. Claire looked at it and her own eyes filled with tears. She drew us, Claire whispered. She drew us together. She drew herself with us, Marcus managed. She's considering it. She's actually considering staying. They held each other in the parking garage, two broken people finding hope in a child's simple sketch. Above them, in the hospital room, Zuri pressed her hand against the window and watched the city lights. For the first time in years, she let herself imagine a future that involved more than just surviving. She let herself imagine a home. The choice wasn't made yet. The fear was still there, sharp and real. But for the first time, Zuri felt something she'd almost forgotten. She felt possibility. The drawing of Marcus, Claire, and Zuri together had given them hope. But hope didn't guarantee outcome. 2 weeks after filing the custody petition, they found themselves standing outside family court, facing a battle that would determine all their futures. Marcus adjusted his tie nervously. He'd worn a suit today, wanting to look responsible, stable. Beside him, Claire squeezed his hand. Behind them, Officer Grant and Maya waited with encouraging smiles, ready to testify on their behalf. Inside the courthouse, Zuri sat with Mrs. Patterson in a waiting room designed for children. Colorful murals decorated the walls and toys filled plastic bins. But nothing could make this place feel less intimidating. Zuri wore a simple blue dress Claire had bought her hair braided neatly. She looked like any other kid, except for the fear in her eyes. "Are you nervous?" Mrs. Patterson asked gently. Zuri nodded. "What if the judge says no? Then we'll find you a good placement. A safe one, I promise." Mrs. Patterson's voice was kind but realistic. "But I've read the Hales' petition. They're serious about this. They've taken parenting classes, passed background checks, prepared a room in their home for you. That's not nothing. What if they change their minds? What if they decide I'm too much trouble? That's a risk with any family, honey, even biological ones." Mrs. Patterson touched Zuri's shoulder. "But sometimes you have to take the risk. Sometimes that's how you find where you belong." Before Zuri could respond, a bailiff called them into the courtroom. The room was smaller than Zuri expected, wood-paneled and formal. Judge Sarah Morrison sat behind the bench, a black woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and an expression that gave nothing away. Marcus and Claire sat at one table with their attorney, a woman named Rebecca Chen. At another table sat a representative from Child Services, looking neutral but professional. Zuri took her seat near the front, Mrs. Patterson beside her. Judge Morrison reviewed the documents before her, taking her time. When she finally looked up, her gaze swept across everyone present. "This is an unusual case," she began. "Mr. and Mrs. Hale, you're petitioning for guardianship of a child whose mother died due to negligence by your company. That alone raises serious concerns about your motivations." Rebecca stood. "Your Honor, my clients have been completely transparent about their past failures. Mr. Hale has taken full public responsibility for the oversight that led to Adele Freeman's death. He's voluntarily relinquished his position as CEO and committed to making amends. Taking responsibility is commendable, but it doesn't qualify someone to be a parent." Judge Morrison turned to Marcus. "Mr. Hale, why should I believe this isn't just an attempt to ease your guilt?" Marcus stood, his voice steady. "Because guilt would be easier to handle than this, Your Honor. Guilt I could pay off, sweep under the rug, ignore until it faded. But love, real love for a child who deserves better, that demands everything. It demands I show up every day, earn her trust, prove I'm worthy of the responsibility. And if she reminds you daily of your failures, of the woman who died because you weren't paying attention, then I'll remember, and I'll do better." Marcus glanced at Zuri. "She deserves someone who won't forget, who won't make the same mistakes." Judge Morrison made a note, then turned to Claire. "Mrs. Hale, you lost a child 3 years ago. That's devastating. How do I know you're not trying to replace him?" Claire stood, her composure firm. "Because my son Daniel was irreplaceable. No child could ever take his place, and I wouldn't want one to try. But losing him taught me something important. Life is fragile. Love is precious. And if I have the chance to give a child safety, stability, and care, I won't waste it by living in the past. You've been through extensive grief counseling." "Yes, Your Honor. Both individually and as a couple. We've done the work to process Danielle's death. This isn't about filling a void. It's about opening our hearts again." Judge Morrison nodded slowly, then looked at the Child Services representative. "What's your assessment?" The representative stood. "The Hales have completed all required classes and screenings. Their home is suitable. Their financial situation is stable despite recent changes, and their references are excellent. However, we do have concerns about the emotional complexity of this arrangement and whether it serves the child's best interests." "Call your first witness, Yardome," Judge Morrison said. Officer Grant took the stand first. He described finding Zuri that first night, how she'd refused charity despite being desperate. He talked about her resilience, her courage, and how Marcus's intervention had probably saved her life. "And you support this custody arrangement?" the judge asked. "I do, Your Honor. I've seen Mr. Hale change over these past weeks. He went from a man who didn't look at the homeless to a man who couldn't look away. That kind of transformation, it's real." Maya testified next, her voice passionate as she described Zuri's character. "She came back to clean the restaurant after stealing food. Who does that? A kid with a conscience, that's who. A kid who deserves people who see her worth." Maya's eyes filled with tears. The Hales see her, really see her, not as a charity case or a photo op, but as a person who matters. When Maya stepped down, Judge Morrison called for a recess. Zuri used the bathroom, her hands shaking as she washed them. This was it. Her whole future decided by a stranger in a black robe. Claire found her in the hallway afterward. "How are you holding up?" "I'm scared," Zuri admitted. "Me too." Claire crouched down to Zuri's level. "But whatever happens, you're going to be okay. You're the strongest person I know." "I don't feel strong." "Strong people rarely do. They just keep going anyway." Claire touched Zuri's cheek gently. "And for what it's worth, I hope you choose to stay with us. Not because we need you to fix us, but because I think we could be good for each other." Before Zuri could respond, they were called back inside. This time, the atmosphere felt heavier, more tense. Judge Morrison's expression was unreadable as she shuffled her papers. "Before I make my decision, I want to hear from Zuri herself." She looked directly at the girl. "Zuri, you're old enough to have an opinion about your future. What do you want?" Zuri's heart pounded, every eye in the courtroom fixed on her. Mrs. Patterson gave her an encouraging nod. She stood slowly, her legs feeling weak. "I don't need another rich person," Zuri said, her voice quiet but clear. "I just need someone who won't leave when things get hard." The words hung in the air. Judge Morrison leaned forward. "And do you believe the Hales will stay?" Zuri looked at Marcus and Claire. Marcus, who'd lost everything trying to make things right. Claire, who'd shared her own pain, her own losses. They weren't perfect. They'd failed before. But they were here, fighting for her when they didn't have to. "I think," Zuri said carefully, "they're trying really hard to be better, and maybe that's enough. Maybe people who try really hard are the ones who don't give up." Silence filled the courtroom. Judge Morrison's stern expression softened slightly. She made several more notes, her pen scratching across paper. Finally, she set down her pen and looked up. "This case has tested my faith in people," she said. "I've seen too many children placed with families who claimed to care but didn't. Too many promises broken, too many hearts damaged." She paused. "But I've also seen genuine transformation, and I believe that's what I'm witnessing here." Marcus held his breath. Claire gripped the edge of the table. Zuri's hands were clenched in her lap. "I'm granting temporary guardianship to Marcus and Claire Hale, under supervision of Child Services. For the next 6 months, Mrs. Patterson will conduct regular home visits and assessments. If at the end of that period all parties are satisfied, we'll revisit the possibility of permanent guardianship." Relief crashed through the courtroom like a wave. Maya let out a small cry of joy. Officer Grant smiled broadly. Rebecca shook her client's hands, congratulating them. But all Marcus and Claire could see was Zuri. The little girl sat frozen, tears streaming down her face. Not sad tears. Something else. Something that looked almost like hope. Mrs. Patterson led Zuri over to Marcus and Claire. "Congratulations," she said warmly. "I'll be checking in next week to see how everyone's settling in." Zuri stood before them, small and uncertain. Marcus knelt down to her level. "Ready to go home?" he asked softly. Zuri's lip trembled. What if I mess up? What if I'm not good enough? Claire knelt beside Marcus. Then we'll work through it together. That's what families do. I've never had a real family, Zuri whispered. Not since Mama died. Neither have we, Marcus said. Not for a while. So we'll figure it out together. All three of us. As they left the courthouse, a crowd of reporters waited outside. Cameras flashed, microphones thrust forward. One reporter's voice rose above the rest. Mr. Hale, do you think one girl can fix your image? Oh, Marcus stopped, still holding Zuri's hand. He looked directly at the camera, his voice firm and clear. She already fixed my soul, and that's worth more than any image. The clip would go viral within hours, but right now, none of them cared about public opinion or social media. They walked to the car together, a new family taking its first uncertain steps. 6 months passed like pages turning in a book. Some days were hard. Some nights Zuri woke up screaming from nightmares about being abandoned, about her mother, about being hungry and cold. But Marcus and Claire were there, every single time, proving they wouldn't leave. On a warm spring morning, Marcus stood in front of a building that had once been a failed investment property. The windows were clean now, freshly painted. A sign above the door read, "Second Chance," in elegant gold letters. Today was opening day. Inside, tables were set with simple but quality place settings. The kitchen hummed with activity as chefs prepared for the lunch rush. But this wasn't like Marcus's old restaurants. Yes, people could pay for their meals, but every Sunday, the doors opened to anyone who needed food, no questions asked, no payment required. Claire walked through the dining room, checking details with the practiced eye of someone who'd learned to care about the little things. She'd taken on managing the community outreach programs, coordinating with local shelters and social services. The work gave her purpose she hadn't felt in years, and Zuri, dressed in a small purple apron embroidered with her name, helped in the kitchen. She was taller now, healthier. Her skin glowed, her eyes held light instead of fear. She laughed as one of the chefs showed her how to properly fold napkins into swans. "You're a natural," the chef said. "Better than some adults I've trained." Zuri beamed with pride. School had been hard at first. The other kids didn't understand where she came from, why she sometimes hoarded food in her desk or panicked when called on unexpectedly. But slowly, with the help of a good therapist and patient teachers, she was learning to trust again. Learning that the world could be kind. Officer Grant arrived early in civilian clothes. He'd become a regular fixture in their lives, stopping by for dinner once a week, checking in on Zuri like an honorary uncle. "The place looks great," he said, looking around. "Your mother would be proud, Zuri." Zuri touched the locket around her neck. Inside was the photograph of her mother, protected now in gold, that Marcus had bought her for her 11th birthday. "I hope so," she said softly. "I think about her every day." "That's how you keep people alive," Grant said, "by remembering, by honoring them with how you live." Maya burst through the door, carrying boxes of fresh bread from a local bakery. She managed all the restaurant's charity programs now, having left her old job to work full-time at Second Chance. Her face was flushed with excitement. "We've got a line forming outside already," she reported. "People heard about the free meals. Word spreads fast in the homeless community." Marcus smiled. "Then let's not keep them waiting." At noon, they unlocked the doors. People filed in slowly at first, uncertain. Some were families who'd fallen on hard times. Others were individuals who lived on the streets, wearing layers of dirty clothes, carrying everything they owned. All of them looked hungry. All of them looked tired. But as they sat down at clean tables, as hot food was placed in front of them with dignity and respect, something shifted in the room. Conversations started. Smiles appeared. For a few hours, these people weren't homeless or poor or forgotten. They were guests. They were valued. Zuri carried plates to a table where a young woman sat with two small children. The woman's eyes filled with tears when she saw the food. "Thank you," she whispered. "My kids haven't eaten in 2 days." Zuri remembered that feeling, the gnawing hunger, the desperation. She smiled at the children. "Eat as much as you want. There's plenty." Throughout the day, Zuri moved through the restaurant helping where she could. She refilled water glasses, cleared plates, talked to people who looked lonely. And with each small act of service, she felt something inside her healing. The scared, angry child who'd stolen food months ago was still there, but she was growing into someone new. Someone who knew what it meant to suffer and wanted to ease that suffering for others. As the afternoon turned to evening, the paying customers began arriving. Business people on lunch breaks, couples out for dinner, families celebrating birthdays. They sat alongside the homeless guests, sharing the same space, eating the same quality food. Some looked uncomfortable at first, but most simply ate their meals and left, having witnessed something that challenged their assumptions about who deserved dignity. Claire found Zuri in the kitchen during a quiet moment, sketching in a notebook she always carried now. "What are you drawing?" Claire asked. Zuri showed her. It was the restaurant, full of people, all different backgrounds and situations, gathered around tables. At the bottom she'd written, "Home isn't where you eat, it's who eats with you." Claire's eyes welled with tears. "That's beautiful, sweetheart. Can I hang it somewhere?" Zuri nodded. "Maybe by the front door, so everyone who comes in knows they belong here." "Perfect." Claire hugged her, and this time Zuri didn't stiffen or pull away. She hugged back. Marcus found them like that, his two favorite people embracing in the kitchen of a restaurant built on second chances. His phone buzzed with a text from his former board chairman, something snarky about how his little charity project would never be profitable. Marcus deleted it without responding. Profit wasn't the point anymore. That night, after the restaurant closed and the staff went home, Marcus, Claire, and Zuri sat in a booth near the back. The same booth where Zuri had first eaten stolen food, terrified and alone. Now she sat between her guardians, the custody having been made permanent just last week, eating dessert and laughing at Marcus's terrible jokes. "I've been thinking," Zuri said, setting down her fork, "about the settlement money." Marcus and Claire exchanged glances. The $50,000 sat in a trust fund, untouched. They'd told Zuri it was hers to use however she wanted when she turned 18. "What about it?" Marcus asked. "I want to use some of it now, to create a scholarship fund, for other kids like me, kids who've been homeless, who've lost parents, who need help getting back into school." Zuri's voice was confident, strong. "Mama fought for that money. I think she'd want it to help people." Claire reached over and squeezed Zuri's hand. "That's an incredibly mature decision. We can set it up however you want," Marcus added. "Maybe call it the Adele Freeman Memorial Scholarship?" Zuri smiled, tears in her eyes. "Yeah, I'd like that." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, three people who'd found each other in the wreckage of tragedy and built something new, not perfect, not without scars, but real, honest, loving. "I need to tell you both something," Zuri said suddenly, her voice serious. "I know I'm not Daniel, and you're not my mama. We can't replace the people we lost." "We know," Claire said gently. "But," Zuri continued, "I'm glad you're my family now. I'm glad I don't have to be alone anymore." Marcus's throat tightened. "We're glad too, kiddo, more than you know." "And I forgive you," Zuri said to Marcus, "for what happened to Mama. It still hurts. It probably always will. But holding on to anger hurts more, so I forgive you." Marcus couldn't speak. He just nodded, tears running freely down his face. Claire wrapped her arms around both of them, and they sat there in the empty restaurant holding each other, letting healing happen in its own time and way. Outside the window, the city continued its endless motion. People rushing home, cars honking, life happening in all its messy, complicated glory. But inside Second Chance, 3 people who'd learned to trust again, to love again, to hope again, sat together in peace. Above the door, Zuri's drawing hung in a simple frame. Customers would see it every time they entered, a reminder that everyone deserves a seat at the table. That kindness costs nothing but means everything. That second chances aren't just given, they're built, one choice at a time, one person at a time, one day at a time. Months later, on a Saturday afternoon, Zuri stood in the restaurant helping serve Sunday dinner. A little girl, maybe 7 years old, watched through the window. She was dirty, clearly homeless, her eyes fixed on the food inside. Zuri recognized that look immediately. She'd worn it herself not so long ago. Zuri walked outside, moving slowly so she wouldn't scare the girl. "Hey," she said softly. "You hungry?" The girl nodded, suspicious but desperate. "Come on inside. We've got plenty of food, and it's free. No one's going to hurt you or call the cops." Zuri held out her hand. "I promise. I used to be just like you." The little girl hesitated, then took Zuri's hand. They walked inside together where Marcus saw them and understood immediately. He gestured to an empty booth. "Have a seat," he said warmly. "I'll bring you something good." As the little girl ate with desperate hunger, Zuri sat across from her, remembering what it felt like to be that scared, that alone, that hungry. But also remembering that one act of kindness had changed everything. One person who'd stopped and cared when they didn't have to. She smiled at the girl. "What's your name?" "Jasmine," the girl whispered. "Nice to meet you, Jasmine. I'm Zuri." She pulled out her sketchbook. "Want me to draw you something while you eat?" Jasmine nodded shyly, and Zuri got to work. As her pencil moved across the page, she felt her mother's presence somehow, felt her approval. This was how healing happened. Not by forgetting the pain, but by using it to help others. Not by erasing the past, but by building a better future. Marcus and Claire watched from across the restaurant, their hearts full. They'd started this journey broken, guilty, desperate for redemption. But somewhere along the way, it had stopped being about fixing themselves and started being about loving a child who needed them. And in that shift, they'd found something they'd lost. They'd found purpose. They'd found family. They'd found home. The restaurant's sign glowed in. The evening light. Second chance. A promise and a reminder that everyone deserves another opportunity. That love can grow in the most unlikely places. That sometimes the people you save end up saving you right back. And in a booth by the window, a formerly homeless girl who'd once stolen food to survive now shared her story with another child who needed to hear it. The cycle of compassion continuing, spreading outward like ripples in water, touching lives in ways that couldn't be measured or counted. Just felt. Just lived. Just loved. If someone's guilt is the reason you suffered, would you ever be able to forgive them and call it family? Drop a like if this story moved you and subscribe for more powerful stories about second chances and unexpected hope.